Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette. We're so glad you're with us to stay curious today. We're rocking on April now. April 3rd, Monday, on this show today. Marty Winkle, my co producer for our 3 years we've been doing this. Marty, 786 episodes starting today. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing fine, Mark. How are you?
Well, we had some excitement today, Marty. Tell them who was in the building today.
Astronaut Jack Lousma, STS-3 and Skylab 2, I think, right?
That's correct, or three if you're he was the second crewed mission is the way we like to look at it. Skylab two if you're an engineer, and three if you're no two if you're not an engineer. They get it mixed up, but the engineers thought Skylab itself was one, so two would be the first crew, and he'd been the third crew. Although the last crew has three on their patch. So that's why I'm a little bit confused here, but I don't get confused when I'm looking at this beautiful green screen behind me. That is our being the American Space Museum and the U.S. Space Walk of Fame's Gemini Monument Gallery. Those pylons up and down the row here have in bronze Gemini astronaut handprints in there on a beautiful day to take a walk down Spaceview Park. The Indian River's right on the other side, and 9 miles away from the river is Cape Kennedy and our Space Force where we launch rockets. So we chose as our background today because we got a mixed bag of space history, some kind of juxtapose the Mercury astronauts against the Artemis astronauts that were announced today. If you hadn't caught that information, we'll look at that. And you have an astronaut birthday, and we're going to talk about our Shuttle Fest coming up here, Marty. So kicking off the week in grand style, and let's just hit our first flyer there or meme where Shuttle Fest is going to be 2 weeks or a week from Saturday. We are so blessed that you all want to come to this event. We've got 3 panels set up. We're going to talk about them throughout the week here. Not going to spend a lot of time with that today, but you hit that QR code and you can get in for $15 and instead of 20 at the door and pick out a box lunch for $12 there. But there's a lot of places to eat nearby, and we're going to have a 90-minute lunch break there. So Shuttle Fest 2 is kicking off. And we also want to, we want to promote our astronauts, but one of our very favorite ones is Nicole Stott. And we haven't talked about her Stottisms for a while. Live like a crew, not like passengers. And that's so important that we all chip in, not for the Earth's environment, but for our own human being environment to be nice to each other. If you act like a crew, then you're not going to want to make waves that could come back and haunt you later. But Nicole Stott, we love you. She's a great supporter of our museum. Marty, I saw she was over at Comic-Con in Orlando over the weekend promoting her Art for Space Foundation out of Tampa there. So live like a crew, folks, not like passengers. And we are blessed that the Holiday Hyatt Place on Route 1, right near the 405 entrance to Kennedy Space Center, beside the Boeing building. There's a rocket launching off the pad there. Our great friends Robert and Dana are always wanting to host Space Geeks. So that's a place to do it. And they have a beautiful 5th floor launch gallery that we're going to broadcast there from one day. So Hyatt Place, thank you for sponsoring Stay Curious and our Shuttle Fest 2, where we had it last year. All right, let's see, where am I going next? Shuttle Fest 2 will feature a morning panel. What's the legacy of the shuttle era? We've got Nick Thomas, who's the Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex Delaware North lead educator. John Zarella, former CNN reporter, still has his chops and is doing reporting out of some Miami broadcasting stations there. And our good friend Tom Usiak, an industry photographer that photographed close to 70 shuttle launches in a very professional way. Their talk is going to be at 10 a.m. at the Hyatt Place. It's going to be streamed live on ASM's YouTube there. So, what's the legacy of the shuttle era? Think about that, and then compare what you think about with Nick Thomas, John Zarella, and Tom Usiak as they are going to kick off our Shuttle Fest just a week from Saturday. And if y'all didn't catch that it was April Fool's and that STS-70A top secret mission landed at the Bristol Motor Speedway back in space history, well, ha ha ha, okay. But, there is April Fool's Day is a fun day to play jokes and so forth. Marty, did you see what the, I should have put that up there, we would have. Did you see what the Space Force Museum did out at the space at the Cape Canaveral?
No, I have no idea what they did.
They actually advertised that they were putting a Buc-ee's out there. A Buc-ee's gas station fast food place. If you don't know what Buc-ee's is, you will someday. Okay, it's like Walmart meets Home Depot and outdoor land. Okay, it's a great place. So, but somebody born on April 1st. Yeah, go ahead, Marty.
You mentioned Buc-ee's is a gas station.
Yeah, Buc-ee's is a gas station, a big gas station.
It's a gas station on steroids.
On steroids, yeah, gas station on steroids. Great food. Bucky the Beaver is out there, so that was their April Fool's Day for the Cape Canaveral Space Force's museums out there. So, good joke out there. Jamie Draper, who's over that, I'll have to call him up about that. Well, April 1st is the birthday of this former astronaut, Dr. William Frederick Fisher, was born April 1st, 1946 in Dallas, Texas. So Dr. Fisher celebrated his 77th birthday. I don't think he's working in the ER department anymore like he did in his retirement, but he was a mission specialist on STS-51I in August 1985, one of the first astronauts. He performed 2 EVAs, all right, spacewalks out there. Of course, he was married to Anna Fisher, the married fellow physician and later astronaut Anna Lee Fisher. And they have 2 daughters. They've been divorced for 22 years, they were divorced in 2000. They have 2 daughters, and we've seen Anna Fisher out to Space Center. And she doesn't bring up the marriage, Marty, but that's all right. That's we respect them highly. But he had 2 spacewalks with Van Hoften to repair the Syncom 4-3 satellite, and it was the longest spacewalk in history at the time that they performed out there. Dr. Fisher collects Bill Graham Fillmore posters, Family Dog, other rock concert posters from the 65-73 time frame. I'd love to see his man cave decorated with those posters. He's an amateur luthier. You know what that is, Marty? Yeah. He makes guitars. Well, that's something to do. He makes guitars or mandolins, repairs them, and refinishes mandolins, Napolitan style mandolins. So he's a firearms dealer. Very interesting, all right? Born in Dallas, he kind of grew up in Syracuse, New York, then went to Stanford University. So happy 77th birthday over the weekend to Bill Fisher. And on April 2nd, 1959, these boys were announced as our first astronauts, 1959. All right. And so we're talking 64 years ago. This group was selected for to crew the Mercury astronaut there. You know them by heart, of course. Up there at the top's Wally Schirra, left to right, John Glenn, sitting down is Deke Slayton, Gus Grissom, and that's Alan Shepard, and then Scott Carpenter and Gordo Cooper is above him there. And look at that sick looking boilerplate there. That's the best they could find at 1959 to pose them of what was going to look like what they were going to go to space in. Um, Originally, a wide range of candidates was considered, but in December 1958, President Eisenhower intervened and said that military test pilots would come from the candidate pool. Uh, you had to have 1,500 hours of flight, 10 years experience, all right? Had to be under 40 years old. Think about that for a minute. Had to be under 40 years old, under 6 feet in height, excellent physical condition, of course, and 110 military officers where their records were pulled, they were called in, and of course these 7 became history. All eventually flew in space. Only one walked on the moon, of course, Alan Shepard, sitting down there on the right. Uh, on Apollo 14. So very, very my heroes, without a doubt. Growing up as a boy, that was my heroes in there, and loved every minute of the Mercury and Gemini programs with my heroes. A year before this, Eisenhower proposed the establishment of NASA. All right. In a message to Congress, he said, I want to establish a National Aeronautics and Space Administration into which the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics would be absorbed. Okay. And so this is President Eisenhower on April 1st, 1960, all right, 63 years ago, with NASA's first head, Keith Glennon. And what they're looking at, Marty, are photos from the Tyros-1 satellite. This was almost a top secret meeting where we put a satellite up that took photographs to show weather patterns. Immediately, a military guy like Eisenhower, he was the chief of the entire Allied forces during World War II. President Eisenhower knew the military advantage, but he weighed that cautiously so that Russia, China, would not think that we were going to monopolize space, probably like they would wanted to, for military purposes. In case you didn't know it, Dr. Keith Glennon, he came from the academic world as president of Case Institute of Technology in Ohio. Of course, he was followed by James Webb after his term was up in January 1961. And he served for about 2.5 years as NASA's first administrator. Keith Glennon there, talking 63 years ago, April 1st, about space with our president there. How cool is that? So finally, for space history news today, dun 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 dun. Wish I could play music, but we get flagged for that all the time on YouTube. This is the Big G. The final contract with McDonnell for the Gemini spacecraft was awarded on this date in 1963. And NASA announced the signing of a contract with McDonnell for the Gemini spacecraft, all right? Final negotiations were made, and the estimated cost was $428 million, all right? That's probably about $4 billion in today's money. As a $500 million in 1963. This shows a model that never flew in space. They were going to take the Gemini spacecraft and put a rear end on it, all right, with a bigger heat shield, and those 3 windows there be like a bus for 3 other astronauts, or 2 rows of astronauts, maybe 6 more, to be ferried up to the manned orbiting laboratory or such. So the contract called for 13 flight-rated spacecraft, 12 to be used in spaceflight, 1 for ground testing. In addition, McDonnell would provide 2 mission simulator trainers, a docking simulator trainer, 5 boiler plates, and pay for all the impact tests and all the ground equipment. Had $500 million in 1963 money, and the Mercury program was underway. 12 spacecraft were built. They actually used 10 every 6 weeks, it seemed. In 1965 and 66, we were launching 2 men to space, learning how Gemini had to prove, 1, that we could live a week in space, 3 days to the moon, 3 days back, a day there, which we did. Gemini 7 was 14 days in space. Then we had to rendezvous and dock as we were taking 2 spacecraft to the moon. And one was going to be sort of disposable and land and go up to the mothership and come back to Earth. We had to, and that first rendezvous and docking was Gemini 8 with, as we're looking at the Gemini uh, monuments there here at our Space View Park. Gemini 8 did that first with Neil Armstrong and David Scott. And then we had to have a spacesuit to walk on the moon, and that was one of the hardest things, was to go outside the spacecraft because they didn't put enough handholds, and moving around was a nightmare and sweaty and got really worked up. And finally, Gemini 12 with Buzz Aldrin doing two stand-up EVAs and a real spacewalk for 2.5 hours. Figured out how to do it right, as well as test all the equipment to walk on the moon on Gemini 12. Little did Buzz Aldrin know that he would be doing that himself as the second man on the moon just 3 years later. So the Gemini program, we love talking about it. It's a great tribute there that we have at Spaceview Park, just 3 blocks from where our museum is. And of course, I say it all the time, the American Space Museum and its nonprofit foundation, the U.S. Space Walk of Fame, has for over 20 years been preserving the birth of America's space age right here in its delivery room, Brevard County. And this is an iconic place. This is like the Taj Mahal. Marty knows I get worked up about our Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and Shuttle monuments out there. They are like no other place in the country where you see a tribute to astronauts. All the Gemini astronauts' handprints are in bronze on those pylons there. We've shown to you many times. Of course, Ed White and Gus Grissom were around when those were harvested, and we have their busts there. I think Pete Conrad also had already passed away before we got his handprints. So, 2001, Marty, that was 22 years ago, right? But when you were working on that lunar module for Grumman, all right, you didn't know it all. You were too busy that on April 2nd, 1968, was the world premiere of a space science fiction movie that really seemed out of this world at the time. 2001, A Space Odyssey. All right. We're 22 years away from 2001. And yet the world premiere was April 2nd, 1968 at the Uptown Theater in Washington, D.C. It was 2.5 hours long, necessitating intermission. Produced and directed by Stanley Kubrick. It was written by science fiction icon author Arthur C. Clarke. The film is widely regarded as one of the greatest and most influential films ever made. And I don't think too many would disagree with that. 55-year anniversary for 2001: A Space Odyssey. After it was premiered, Kubrick decided to take 19 minutes of footage out of the film. All right. So I don't know what's on the cutting room floor there. But the screenplay was written by Kubrick and Clarke, based on Clarke's 1951 short story, The Sentinel. The posters were created by legendary space artist Robert McCall, that's done a lot of NASA work. The film follows a voyage to Jupiter with the computer HAL after the discovery of the moon, on Earth's moon, an alien monolith was there affecting human evolution. This movie, it's a wild movie. It deals with existentialism, human evolution, technology, artificial intelligence, and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. Keir Dullea and Gary Lockhart were the stars. And, of course, the renegade computer HAL. Who can forget that? Cost $12 million to make in 1968, and it grossed, within a year, $148 million. So a big, successful movie. 4 Academy Award nominations, winning for Best Visual Effects. And it was voted the best science fiction film of all time in 2014 by film experts, filmmakers, science fiction writers, the right people. Hard to argue with that. You can put some of your other favorites up there. But I may go see this or not see it. I've got a couple copies of it, so I think I'll be watching it this week. 2001: A Space Odyssey is now 55 years old. Yeah, in 1968, we thought in 40 years we might be having an existence like this, but we're so far from it. It's kind of comical in a way that we look back 55 years, and we've never even been back to the moon in 50 years. So 2001: A Space Odyssey. Go rent it, go download it, enjoy it. Well, Marty, the buzz was that this astronaut, Jack Lousma, was going to be here today. We've seen him out at the Space Center with our good friend Nick Thomas, who's the Delaware North astronaut encounter lead educator out there. There is Mr. Jack Lousma of Skylab and Space Shuttle 3 spaceflight fame with Ken Mattingly, who's passed away. There's Charlie Mars, who I lovingly call our godfather, big influence on our museum. Karan Conklin, our executive director, and she's been with Charlie over 20 years. And there you are, Marty, and right there. He had some good stories to tell. He enjoyed his time here. Just wanted to set the pace there, that there's Jack. Handsome Jack, a Marine, there with Ken Mattingly, who orbited the moon. Lousma would have been a moonwalker, make no doubt about it. If we'd had Apollo 18, 19, or 20, he would have probably been a commander of 19, I think. I forget how it would have played out before they were canceled. Two men flew the shuttle for the third time, Columbia, and then STS-4. After that was the last time we had two people in space. There is Jack in the middle with Owen Garriott, the science officer on Skylab, and their commander, Al Bean, former moonwalker. And in his talk about Skylab, is what he likes talking about, he took most of the pictures that you see the astronauts having fun in there. He said and Tom Usiak, he told me he used a Hasselblad camera for most of it on there. And then they used a 35 millimeter camera inside the Apollo command module on the return to Earth there. Jack, there's your handprints out there at Spaceview Park. There's a few of the space workers that surround our astronauts out there. I see Lee Sterrick, who was at one time very involved here at our museum, is there. And this is what we're about. That's our Apollo gallery there. Marty, what have you got to say about Mr. Jack here, if anything?
I mean, I enjoy talking with him. His memory, as far as at least his long-term memory, he has some good stories that he can recall them. He's very interesting.
Yeah, he's 87 years old, I believe. There he is with Charlie and Karan. Just a second. Anita, just a second. I'd prefer you not do that right now because I have to go through that. I drop things in it all the time. Please, thank you.
Take cans out.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Our wonderful Anita Truex in here trying to clean my desk up there, and I know some things may have fallen in my trash that I don't want cleaned out there. So thank you. We've got a comment, Marty.
Yeah, Mark Usiak has said that's Gordon Fullerton, not Ken Mattingly.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm having a brain seizure here. Thank you. That is Ken Fullerton, not Ken Mattingly there. Let's back up there. There we are. Yes. Got a little distracted there for a moment. Ken Fullerton there. Mary Fullerton, his wife, still around, sharing the love. We hope to get her one day on Stay Curious. And then there's our STS second crew there. Jack Lousma's handprints at Spaceview Park. He told us a story that I'm going to try to put, because I recorded it, talking about driving the train from Moscow to Star City as the engineer on the train. That was a fun story. There's Karan showing him and Charlie Mars our women's gallery handprints there. Jack, of course, knew all the ladies there. Kathy Sullivan, Eileen Collins, and of course Sally Ride on there. Got a lot of people watching today. Hope that they've been out to see Jack. There's Charlie showing him the windscreen or the uh, uh, window frame of a space shuttle. And when he saw that, Jack Lousma said, "Gee, I didn't realize it was that big. Looked smaller inside the shuttle." And so I thought that was a cool comment. Hope Christopher Mick has been enjoying our program today. Mark UCX watching. Doug Forrest. We're going to feature him on our panel at Shuttle Fest about art. Thank you for supporting that, Doug. He's in Hollywood. He's out there in Los Angeles. Fox McCloud is watching, as is Hazel Banks. Hi, Hayes. Tom UCX watching. Thanks for correcting me on Gordon Fullerton there. Bill Whiting's watching. Cynthia Rossi, Daniel DeYoung. Ramsey McZaya was watching. Larry Pushkar's back in Michigan. I know I saw some daffodils springing up around there, so spring is around the corner. Melissa Pope is watching. Dave Stange, Deborah Johnson, Keith Sewell, and the Code Blue Collective. Thank you for staying curious as Marty and I kick off another week of space history, astronaut birthdays, and a lot of great things, trivia type stuff, talking about Jack there. Well, I was thinking of one story he talked about, Marty, that he said that he took 2 showers on Skylab, didn't he? And he said my commander didn't take any. They were up there 59 days, and that shower, he said, was so cold that Alan Bean wouldn't get in it. But he said he had a couple showers up there in 59 days. Of course, they had wet wipes to keep themselves clean and all that sort of stuff. Jack, we put together a little meme for you here to give to him so he could show his wife Gracia and his friends up in Michigan. He's in Texas area now, I think. But lower left is his Astronaut Hall of Fame tribute there. There he is with Bruce Melnick, who's the chief of the astronaut at Kennedy Space Center. There he is eating the famous lasagna dish with Carlton Bailey in there looking over it saying, "I wish I'd ordered lasagna, but you have to do that special at Zarella's." And there I am in the background there. So Jack is with astronaut Doug Hurley. And when we were there at Zarella's that day, there were a lot of Artemis astronauts there because they were for the launch of Artemis when they were all there. And a woman come over and said, "Doug Hurley wants to meet you. Is that okay, Jack Lousma?" And says, "Of course." And I could tell Hurley was happy to meet one of his heroes there. So you're a hero to all of us there, Mr. Jack Lousma. Thank you for all you've done. He tried to run for politics in Michigan. Very verbose, articulate man at his age, and we'll be seeing more of him. He's going to help Marty out as Marty's chairing the Grumman reunion of the lunar module workers here for the last time. He's going to be part of the panel discussion that Marty's going to have there. And Jack told us that there's all kinds of celebrations for the 50th anniversary of Skylab, which of course happens in the 1973-74 time frame. 3 quick missions up there. So Jack, we'll be seeing more of you. God bless you and all you stand for, and hoorah to a great Marine, Jack Lousma. Well, the big announcement today that I'm sure you all know about, our administrator, Bill Nelson, with the next crew that's going to loop around the moon. All right. And left to right there is Jeremy Hansen of Canada. You've got Victor Glover is going to be the pilot. On the other side of Mr. Nelson is the commander, Reed Weissman. And, of course, one of my favorites, Christina Cook, are going to loop around the moon on Artemis 2 in about a year. All right. I'll give you a little thumbnail about each one of them. They're not going to orbit the moon. They're going to loop around the moon and come within 6,000 miles of the backside. And I'm kind of like going, really? please, why not orbit the moon? You're going to go all that further. I mean, they want to test out all the systems and everything, and we understand that. But so then Artemis 3, hopefully in 2 years or more, will be landing on the moon. But they're going to test everything. Um, Here is Mr. Bill Nelson's PR statement. The Artemis 2 crew represents thousands of people working tirelessly to bring us to the stars. This is humanity's crew. We are going. We're going to the moon. And that's what they say. We are going. But I'm a little cynical, myself personally, not the museum, because we're going to loop around the moon on a 10-day journey. All right. It'll demonstrate that all of Orion's life support apparatus and other systems will operate as designed with the astronauts on board in deep space. But we proved that with Artemis 1 on a 30-day mission. So President Joe Biden privately called the four on Sunday to congratulate them. Of course, there's a lot of publicity pictures out like this one. Where am I at? Oh, here, I'm going backwards. Here we are. Like this one out there, the crew. So they've known it for a couple of weeks probably. Artemis 2 will mark the debut crewed flight, but not the first lunar landing of an Apollo successor program aimed at returning astronauts to the moon's surface later this decade, is how they're phrasing it now. So good for them. You're going to hear a heck of a lot about them. You're going to hear a little about him right now. As we've got Mr. Reed Reisman, Gregory Reed Reisman, the commander, sitting there in the center. Why is he the commander? Well, he's a Navy captain. He spent 165 days in space on Expedition 4041 on the International Space Station. He has 2 spacewalks, and he rode up in a Soyuz spacecraft. So he's qualified. Born in Baltimore, Maryland. He's 47 years old, all right? He's born in November, so he'll probably be 48 when he goes to space. Yeah, well, he will be 48 when he goes to space. You'll see why I'm pointing that out in a second. Oh, there we go. Let's look at Victor Glover. Above his commander there, he's going to be the pilot. Of course, Victor Glover was born in Pomona, California. He was the pilot of Crew 1 that spent 167 days on the International Space Station on Expedition 6465, right after Christina came back from her record-setting expedition. I'll tell you about in a minute. Victor Glover's 4 EVAs for 26 hours working on the space station. I was really thinking he'd be the commander of the lunar landing. But he's going to loop around the moon in a little over a year in that Artemis Orion spacecraft, okay? And then Christina Cook over there on the left, she's 40. Victor Glover's 46, so he'll be 47 when he goes to space again. And Christina Hammock Cook, K-O-C-H, Hammock's her maiden name, born in Grand Rapids, Michigan, same place Jack Lousma was born. How about that? But she was really raised in Jacksonville, North Carolina. She was part of 3 expeditions, 59, 60, 61, for 329 days in space, the woman's record. All right. And I was picking hers to be the woman to walk on the moon. So I still got Jessica Meir is who I think will be the woman now picked to go to the moon, to walk on the moon. Jeremy Hansen is the other Canadian astronaut. That was part of the deal. Canada is heavily involved, like ESA, in the crew module. That's the life support systems for Orion on the back of it. Well, Jeremy Hansen's 47. He's going to be 48, okay, when he goes to the moon. He was born in London, Ontario, but he's raised on a farm in Asla Craig, Ontario. He's not been to space. He'll be a rookie, but he's a cave naut and an aquanaut. He spent a lot of times in caves, and then an aquanaut on the Nemo 19 mission. And he'll be 48 when he goes to the moon. Marty, I keep mentioning the ages of these astronauts because who's the oldest person to go to the moon? Marty, I know you know that. Take a stab at it while I get a drink.
I would say Alan Shepard.
Final answer?
Final answer.
You're correct, Marty Winkle. Alan Shepard was indeed 48 years old when he went to the moon. So there'll be a little hubbub there because it's a possibility. Victor Glover's born in April. He's going to be 47 and 48. So maybe one of those guys could turn 49 before they walk on the moon, and he'd be. But they're going to look at the months, and so it'll be kind of interesting who will be the oldest one to. Well, I mean, Shepard's going to have it until someone walks on the moon on there. So there's your Artemis 2 crew. Aren't we proud of them? Aren't we proud of what NASA's doing? Is staying on track, investing the money. That's the big deal. Is having the money. The pieces and parts of Artemis 2 will be starting to come in on our Space Coast here, and they'll start stacking it in the VAB. And this crew of 4 will be setting history, returning to the vicinity of the moon. All right, hopefully within in 2025 on there. So, and who will be walking on the moon? Well, here are your Artemis astronauts, so we can cross off 4 of them there because they're not going to send 2 people back at the same time. All right. So, NASA's making a big deal that they want a woman and a person of color to be on the moon. All right. I think they should pick the best qualified people first. And I'm sure it'll pan out that the diversity is there and so forth. But definitely a woman going to the moon, a person of color. It could be a woman satisfy both those requirements or a man. So, no, man can't. I mean, yeah, man fulfill the colored part of it there. So anyway, we are so pleased to have the announcement. Know these astronauts are going to be working for this important trip to space. And we support them wholeheartedly as it gets the country focused on what we love here at the American Space Museum, and that is space exploration at its finest. We celebrate the unmanned and the manned programs here in great style. In fact, astronaut Jack Schweiker was quite impressed with our Cape Canaveral gallery back there. So, Marty, you're scribbling out a couple notes there. We have anything to clean up here as I'm about to say goodbye to our Stay Curious friends today?
No, nothing really to clean up. But Artemis 2 will set the record for the human being being the furthest from the Earth.
Yes, they will.
Yeah.
Yes, they will, which is held by, tell them who it's held by now, Marty.
Apollo 13.
That's right. And I think Fred Hayes was on the farthest right-hand seat. Didn't he claim the furthest?
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing. But
I
it should have
thought
been
Lovell would be on there.
Yeah, Jim Lovell should be in the left, not seat, but the left standing position.
Yeah, at any rate, yes. Apollo 13 can claim that. They're going to go a little further than that out there, go through the, the main thing is the systems to protect them from the harsh elements of radiation from the sun and so forth. So looking forward to it. I still wish they'd change the plan to loop around to do a couple orbits around the moon, because they're going to have one shot at going by it from 6,000 miles away and just see the backside close up. But that is how we're planning to do it. And Marty will tell you, I don't understand a lot of that part of our program that Marty does.
Yeah, I would think it's just, NASA has a tendency of taking smaller steps. And that might be a small step prior to orbiting crude.
Indeed. But our small step for Apollo was 10 orbits. But that really won our space race. And there's no space race going on now, or is there? China's pretty active, so we'll see. Well, Marty, thank you for a great job today getting us out on good style today. We've got several guests lined up this week. Including we're going to have a wonderful talk on April 6th, Thursday, about the Buran Space Shuttle from Gary Allgaier. And you love our programs with Gary Allgaier. He's a structural engineer, and he's worked up a really fabulous program on the Mir Space Station just for you. So look forward to that on Thursday. And we're going to be talking about Shuttle Fest and pull some guests in on that, including the manager of the Hyatt Place, Rob, will be coming in here and share about that. So, Marty, thank you again for everything. Thank you to our wonderful staff at the American Space Museum for helping us put on this broadcast. And until tomorrow, I'm Mark Marquette saying I can't wait to see you again on Stay Curious to bridge the space between us.